Hello and welcome to the next episode of The Middleman. And today my special guest is Kylie G, the priestess of poetry. And during the show, we'll get into her amazing poetry. It's like 50 Shades of Grey in spoken word, some of it, and find out about her life, her travels, her journey. So welcome to the show, Kylie. How are you today?
Hi, Roy. I'm great. What an introduction. I may be blushing a little bit over here.
This will probably be around show 13, which is the Goddess show. So perfect. And 13 shows in, I'm getting better and better at intros.
Great. I love it. Thank you for
And
having me.
oh Lord, not long after I met you and I started the podcast, you were on my list. I've got to get Kylie on the show, definitely, because your poetry is. I've done a bit of poetry myself in the past, but I'm just some kind of amateur compared to how you write and how you speak, and it's amazing. And we'll definitely hear some of your poetry as we get on throughout the show. So let's start at the beginning. And again, I always like to get straight into it. How and when did you start your poetry? How did you get into it? What inspired it?
So this is actually a really cool story, and I think you're really going to appreciate this, Roy. I didn't know that I could write poetry until 2.5 years ago, and I went on a coffee date with a gentleman who was a commercial spiritual alchemist that was just visiting Australia, and he's from the United States. And he's quite a magical man, this man. And we sat opposite each other having coffee. And he told me during the course of our date that I reminded him of a Lana Del Rey song, Ride. And I'd never listened to the song before. I just smiled and nodded and didn't think too much of it. And then he went back to the States, and a couple of months later, I was at home one day on my own and cleaning the house. And I just had this piece of intuition drop in. You need to listen to that song that Alan said that you were like. And I popped the song on, and it was like this awakening that happened inside me. And I couldn't stop listening to it. It it described me to an absolute T. Well, it described the way that I'd been feeling on the inside so perfectly. And listening to it on repeat, on repeat, on repeat. And I was in my kitchen and grabbed a piece of paper and wrote my first poem in its entirety. I'd say it was about 30 lines. And without conscious thought, it's the strangest feeling. I'd like to say that sometimes I don't actually write my poetry, they get delivered to me. And that was certainly the case with this first piece. It got delivered to my brain and I had to get it out, and I just wrote the whole thing down. And from that moment, the gift was unlocked, I would say, and I've not been able to write since. I mean, I've not
Awesome.
been able to stop writing since.
Yeah, I was going to say you Freudian slips, but
Yeah.
that's well, interesting enough, how you said that was absolutely correct because you're not writing it, you're channeling, and therefore, for me, how I see the world, you're technically not writing it. So
Mhm.
he's exactly writing, exactly said it in the exact way. And I've had a couple of instances as well where I've channeled a poem. I remember one, it was like four. I got woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and it was the most bizarre, weird poem I've ever written. No idea where it came from, no idea what it was about. It was just weird, and I wouldn't say dark, but obscure to the nth degree. But yeah, it's like you said, it just comes in and it just hassles your brain until you get it out. So I totally understand.
Yeah,
Have you
it
got
seems to sometimes feel like a thread that gets delivered now. That's kind of how it comes now, like a thread of it will land, and sometimes it'll just be maybe two phrases, and they'll just sort of sit there mulling on the surface until another time comes and I can grab that thread and then follow it back to where it needs to go. And the biggest lesson I've found is actually not enforcing it. So I don't sit down and be like, I must write today or I must finish that poem today. I allow it to sort of percolate in the atmosphere, and yeah, it comes to me when it's ripe and juicy and ready to be.
Awesome. Have, have you ever tried doing it the other way? So this is how I do it when I mean, I've not done it in a long time, but because I've had other things like this kind of thing to learn. And for me, poetry is all about releasing old emotions. And I found a different way to do it through shadow work. And, but how I like write poetry now, I basically send the thread the other way up into the ether and go, right, I'd like to write a poem about this. Any information out there that can come down? Have you ever thought about trying it that way?
I think that I actually feel like that's what it is when the thread comes, because I feel it's maybe whatever's sort of happening inside that then goes out and then calls that thread in. So yeah, I think
It's
the
lightning
piece,
poetry.
what was that?
It's called lightning poetry. I've just made that up. The reason I'm calling it lightning poetry, because if anybody knows how lightning really works, lightning doesn't come from down and hit the ground. There's actually a bit of a thing that goes up from the ground first, and then it connects in midair,
Mm.
and then it grounds. Yeah, if you can watch that on YouTube, how lightning, yeah, you get this thread that goes up in the air. It's fascinating. So,
Beautiful.
yeah, lightning poetry.
I feel like the piece that I wrote when we were in Pratt together about that experience that we had, that men's experience, that was probably the only time where I've sat there and asked for it. And that was because we'd had this incredible experience, and yet we were in this really tight container where I didn't have the space to be able to use my creativity. And I feel like there was this feeling that was inside me. Often, so I feel like it either comes from there, or sometimes it's a feeling that's like sitting just underneath my skin, and the feeling sort of sits there and sits there until I can like draw it out. And that's what I did this morning, that morning where I called in that the God and Monster poem. I sat there and I allowed myself to be transported back to the moment where we were in that experience with those men, and I allowed that feeling to take over my body, and I asked the divine for the words that needed to come out with that
Wow,
one.
amazing. See, as you was explaining that one, I'm going to call that one poison poetry because you're drawing it out the skin. It's like getting your head up, you're getting your mouth on it and sucking that poison out.
Mm.
Not that it's toxic, but you know, it's definitely not. It's intoxicating, that's for certain. I actually feel like we should start with. Have you got your very first poem at hand?
I know it off by heart.
Oh,
So
look at this! Look, this lady knows. I can. I mean, I've got. There's one of my poems that got published in so many different anthologies. It was the very first one I wrote, and I can't remember it at all. But interesting. I know it's called "Looking Through the Hope," and I know like the first paragraph was. But I basically just said what I was looking at right in that moment. I think I was looking through a window, staring at a hedgerow, looking across the field, staring at the hedgerow. There's lots of creatures all around. See, I'm not even past the first paragraph, and I'm no idea, no idea.
you'll have to read it to me later. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely, I will do after the show. Because I mean, I could. Oh no, I can't get it because it'd make all the screen go funny and share the screen and all that lot. And I wasn't ready for that, so I'm not fully versed in Zoom on how to share the screen that easily. And I could do it for comic effect on the show, you know, all the clunkiness for those that will watch on YouTube. For all you watchers on YouTube, um, well, let's get into it and let's hear the very, very first poem from Kylie G. Stage is yours.
I feel something inside me. It's lurking just below the surface. A feeling of untapped power. It feels like madness, freedom that's yearning to be experienced, unleashed upon the world. Keeping herself hidden for so long, she painted herself into a corner. She tried clipping those wings, stay small, but still it lurked. Moments where it would come bubbling to the surface, little snippets of golden light which scared everybody else to fucking death. So she shut it down. This skin doesn't fit anymore. It feels like it's crawling. It's going to burst open, and I can't contain it any longer, nor would I want to. Freedom awaits, and everyone will stand there as I explode, my light shining so brightly it burns, and they'll say, I knew her once, except they didn't. How could they? She was wild, she was free, and it was glorious. And I just want to stand on the highest mountain and scream out over the rooftops, the aftershocks reverberating out. Do you feel it? Does it scare you or excite you? Join me, if you like, the collective madness, except this is only the beginning, and I am just getting sane.
Fuck me, that was just epic. Oh my word, bloody tingles. And there was a word in there, it was glorious. That was beyond glorious. So for those of you that are listening and those of you who are watching, honestly, got to be some people out there. If you want to hire Kylie, all the details will be in the description of the show. Get a public speaking doing this on stage. It's just going to be an opener to, oh, yeah. Remember this name. The priestess of poetry is just, oh, that's an understatement. That is an understatement. The goddess of poetry.
Thank you, Roy.
This is going to be episode 13. And what a amazing one to have on my 13th show. And for those that are into like the spiritual numerology of things, 13 is the goddess number, which is why religion tried to bastardize it with Friday the 13th and make it unlucky. That was just one reason. But and not wanting to take away from that amazing recital. And there'll be more later on in the show. We haven't finished there, folks, so keep listening. And how long was it before you then wrote a second one?
I feel like that started to happen quite quickly. After that first experience, it was, that piece arrived, and then it was like, it just wouldn't stop. It was like something just kept knocking at my door, and it's like, more, share more. How much more of yourself can you share? And it pushed me like in certain ways that I never thought that it would. And it's honestly been the biggest catalyst in my healing journey, and it's gone more down a sensual and erotic path now. And even the first time that came and I started pushing my own boundaries of what's acceptable and what can I speak about, and can this still be done in a beautiful and honoring way, and liberating myself from the societal norms of what's expected of me and what's considered socially acceptable. I can remember the first time I ever wrote something that was slightly controversial, and I had this like full experience afterwards where I like vomited in the toilet. And now I'm not comfortable unless I'm pushing myself to that level where I'm, continuing and growing through it all the time. So it comes in fits and waves. A lot of the time, it used to always come to me when I was driving or I'm in the shower.
Yeah, see, I still get so much stuff. I'm like,
I
think spirit just like to have a laugh, going, right, let's give them all this stuff, and then nowhere near a fucking pen or can't write.
I mean, two places you can't write. You're in the shower, you're wet, you're driving, and you've got to keep your hands and eyes on the road. So my children have become my scribes.
Perfect.
Which is an interesting experience because they're like, teenager-ish, and I'm like, yell out, Jemima, write a note. And the erotic piece starts, and she's like, oh, Mum, like, seriously? Seriously? Anyway.
Yeah, I'll try and get a voice message done if I'm in the car. I'll try and do it that way.
Yeah, Siri on notes. You can yell at Siri. Siri, yeah. Write a note. That's been very, very useful.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. So what was going on in your life when that first poem came through? Because I know when my first one came through, I was going through depression. Me personally, I was going through tough times. I'm not a big fan of the word depression because I truly feel I wasn't actually depressed. Life was challenging me at the time. I was really starting to open up into my intuitive abilities. So my whole energetic system was starting to reject society because it's going, no, you've got a different system that's outside of that and shedding a layer. Really, interestingly, I've never really thought about that moment back then. But interesting enough, I was working for a company that built land drainage machines, so they were digging.
Oh,
Never figured that one before. And I was doing all the rewiring. Yeah. So interesting when you look back and you find these little quirky things that you go, oh, that's what was really going on.
yeah, yeah.
But talking about controversy, now I didn't write this poem, but this is one of my favorites. It's actually from a film called What About Bob, that starred Bill Murray, where I think he was in a mental home. And it's just a very short poem. And it's roses are red, violets are blue. I'm a schizophrenic, and so am I. It's just fucking brilliant because you're expecting
I
the other
love
way, and it says that. It's just fucking brilliant. Whoever wrote that during that film it's probably Bill Murray because he's a bit like that.
Yeah, he's funny.
So and yeah, what was happening for you personally when that's kicked in?
I'd say I was a fair way into my healing journey. Um, I ended my marriage 6.5 years ago and had four little ones under six when that happened, and that really started me on a path of rediscovery of myself that was quite intense. I had one relationship after that that also ended after about 1.5 years, and it was around that time where that finished where I realized, I was in relationship with a man and different to my marriage, and yet I was still repeating patterns of being with people who were emotionally unavailable. And because I'm committed to growth always, it forced me to look at myself and be like, why and how am I still attracting, these people into my life, and what can I do about it? So I'd say around the time that the poem came, I was deeply journeying with myself. I had a life coach that I'd been working with, um, to help me along my way. And I was really, and the poem really speaks to that past patterning that I think is so prevalent for women, of the staying small to keep yourself safe, and running from my power has been something that I've done, up until that point. In my past was something that I had done, and so writing that piece was really like a statement, the stake in the ground that says I will not hide any longer, and I will be my full self.
Well, I'm very glad that you don't hide anymore. When you got those things to share, it because the energy it invokes. So when you start talking and when you start reciting one of your poems, your energy completely changes, which then affects the energy of the people listening. So like when I do my one-on-one sessions and my coaching and mentoring and healing and all that lot, my energy completely changed because I basically become a different version of myself, and it'd be the same, absolutely the same. And interestingly, when you were speaking about your journey, there was fear there, and fear is a great energy that starts to crack us open. But what we're really taught growing up is to shy away from it rather than walk through it. That's the barrier to our next level of power, our next upgrade. But it makes us feel awkward or horrible or ugh, and that's why we tend not to push through it. So with more and more practice, you push through your fears, and that's how you get to your greatest version of yourself. It's just hidden by a barrier of fear, and then when you get through that, you can always see there's another level, and then there's another level of fear. There's another, and it's just our ego keeping us safe, and we just keep pushing through it, and that releases another bit of ego. We're always going to have ego. It's a necessary thing to help us grow. It's just that kind of going, okay, if you're going to go to the next level, just be careful. It's like a caring parent, really, but we tend to see it as an aggressor. Ego's a very misunderstood thing, even in this modern world.
Mm.
And so you mentioned that you then started getting into the erotic poetry. So what was going on in your life when that started to kick in?
Actually, nothing. Yeah, I've
Was
been on
that
a.
probably why it kicked in? Because there was nothing going on. You had to find another way for entertainment personally.
It's true. Um, I actually have been on a journey with celibacy for the past 4 years. So, um, yeah, I feel that that does obviously heavily tie into how I'm able to now express myself in that way. And the reason I have chosen this for my life was really um, to reconcile my own internal masculine and my own internal feminine, and romance myself back into a beautiful integration. And that's what it's been like a marriage to myself. And so when I speak about him in my poetry, I'm talking to the divine masculine. And often it's the energy that I'm speaking about that actually exists within myself. And I'm making love to him within me,
Yeah.
which has been, which is why I think I can write so fully about it, because I'm actually experiencing the beautiful dance of the relationship within myself.
And look, I mean, there'll be another poem coming soon, but from my experience, because I've heard quite a few of your poems now, when you start doing this, everyone's all in into the energy of it. It just takes you to a different place. It's just incredible. And what's interesting when you was talking about that, so my gift is working at the moment, is giving me insights and stuff to look at. And you was talking about the divine masculine. Who was a divine masculine around you when you were 21?
Ooh, 21. Oh, Roy, I don't remember too much from when I was 21. I was
You're not that old.
that's half my age. So I'm double that now. Um 21. I was actually living in I'd been living in London, and I was a bit wild. So I'll have to think about that, because I'm not actually sure.
So
I
maybe you
met
was acting out a divine part of you in London.
oh,
Just you
absolutely.
definitely would have needed to be in a bit of masculine energy to be in London, because it's such a strong energy city, so
Mm.
compact, so much history behind it, and so much dark history behind it as well. So
I'd
because
say, looking back, that time when I was like 18 to 21, so I moved to London when I was 18. Um, uh, I'd never felt more myself than I actually was at that time. And I believe that gave me a taste of what liberation, of what self-liberation could feel like. Because I got on a plane as an 18-year-old. I got kicked out of university here in Australia on purpose. I was studying a degree in biochemistry, if you can believe it. And I failed all my exams on purpose so I could get kicked out, so I could travel, because I just had this intense knowing that I needed to find myself. And there was an expectation that my life was going to look a certain way, and yet I knew that it wasn't for me. And so jumping on that aeroplane was the first step in my liberation process of saying, I'm going to choose me, and I choose this path. And it hasn't always been easy, but it's been absolutely necessary.
oh look, life would be dull if it was always easy.
Yeah.
What I find interesting, a lot of Aussies go to London to find themselves, not England, London. And what I mean by that is this, since I've lived in Australia, so many Aussies that I speak to and go, "Oh, you ever been to England?" Or I'll be talking and they hear my accent and they go, "Oh, I've been to England." Like, where did you go to? London. Did you go outside of London? No. So you've been to London. because England, for me, England is the countryside. That's England. The
Mm.
rolling hip, the rolling small hills, because we don't really have big hills in England. It's quite flat, really. But the green, the green flowing lands, the Cotswolds, the low, the little streams, and what they try and portray in Disney movies a lot. It is like that if you go looking. But if you stay in London, it's more like Mary Poppins and the tight streets and the smoke and you have to escape into cartoon world to see any kind of color because it's so grey. It's why we get portrayed as grey and it's raining all the time because it's just how we are. That's our color. But you go out in the countryside, that's where you find those. It's a bit more relaxed. And then the English people, we come the other way, and we come to Australia. Perth is pretty much full of Scots people. Perth is just mini Scotland, and but yeah, it's interesting how that we come these opposite poles to find ourselves. We have to get as far away from our land as possible.
Well, I feel like for me, there was also strong family ties. So my grandmother was actually English, and my parents had lived in England, just south down in Kent. So they'd lived there and had my sister there, and my dad was a motor racing driver, and my mom was an Australian who'd just gone over there with a friend to travel, and they met over there, both of them being Australian, and they'd lived there and traveled around for about 13 years before I was born. So I say that I was like running away from what I had here, but actually I was probably returning to roots,
Yeah.
those family roots that felt so strong. Yeah, which is really beautiful. It does still feel like a part of me exists over there. And I did go back when I was 25, and I lived over there for another year when I was 25. And it'll always feel like I left a little piece of my heart over there. I love it.
Yeah. For me, I love that I'm English. I think I've been here about 2 years, and I could sense that my accent was softening. So I was like, no, not having that, not having that. So I made it strong again. But interestingly enough, every time I speak to someone from back home now, because I'm from Lincolnshire, which is East Midlands, which is about 30 for those Aussie people and those that work in kilometres, about 50, 60 kilometres east of Nottingham. And everyone's heard of Nottingham because of Robin Hood. So it's about the same level, just nearer the coast. And I speak to people from back home, like in Lincolnshire, and they sound like they're from Yorkshire. And Yorkshire's a really strong, A up, going down to a bit. It's really strong like that, and that's how they sound to me. And then it makes me realise, yeah, my accent has changed since because I've been here 14 years. To me, I still sound English, and to a lot of others. But when I speak to the people back home, they really sound broad. I'm like, when did your accent change? And yeah, so it's fascinating. And so moving on, let's get on to another poem. Let's go into the eroticism of poetry.
Just trying to think about one that feels important to share.
What was the first erotic poem you ever wrote?
Oh, no, that was tiny. That was like 5 lines. That's the one that had me vomiting in the toilet. That doesn't even.
Why was you vomiting in the toilet because of that one?
No, just because to put something out like that publicly.
I said we'd play all out on this show.
It's not even that bad, Roy. It's so tame. I'm like reluctant to share it.
But I think we need to build people into your erotic poetry. Let's start there. Let's step them up. This is level 1 eroticism. We're going to get into the big stuff afterwards.
Okay, let me see. I don't know if I can even remember. I don't know if I remember this one.
So you can remember a 30-line poem from years ago, but you can't remember a 5-line poem.
Okay, I can. Just give me a moment. I'm visualizing it.
Okay, cool.
Visualizing it in my mind. Okay. This is so lame. This one's so lame.
This is so for you that are watching and listening, this is great to see that how quickly we grow, and then we judge ourselves the first time we did something. Because I think my very first YouTube video is still on my channel, and I sound like a robot because I'm reading from a script. I'm like, this is right, I'm a robot. And I watch it and I just cringe and like, oh God in hell. But it was because I think I watched it about 6 or 7 years after I made it. And I was able to compare it to where I was. I was like, wow, it just shows you how much you've grown. So, I'm really grateful to be able to have that reference point still.
Great. All right. Well, I hope you enjoy my growth that I've experienced since I wrote this one. Um, Sin, sin. Now let's begin. Lay back, receive. Baby girl, breathe. Body shakes, chest heaves. No confession needed. Just call me Eve.
See, that's amazing. That still started that build up of going, whoa, that's just starting to hit me energetically.
I feel like now I need to maybe do a really visceral one.
Maybe expand on that one.
Should we go really visceral now, Roy?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So for those again, you who are watching and you who are listening, that was a little step in. We're just prepping you, getting your body ready for this
Foreplay.
visceral. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was a bit of foreplay there. Yeah, poetry foreplay. That's going to be in the description. This show contains poetry foreplay before we go all into the loins with poetry.
um okay, I'm still trying to decide.
Because what I'm noticing as well, like I've never truly connected when we've been friends since prac and we've connected. We've had a few Zoom conversations, and you've been helping me around growing into my divine masculine, which I'm truly grateful for.
mm,
And it's interesting to see how your energy is pinned on the poem, and yeah, just it's fascinating, and how everybody's going to receive that differently. Watching this podcast and listening to this podcast. And beautiful thing about poetry, it's so audible as well. Because the reason I do this podcast visually as well, because when my spiritual stuff starts to kick in, especially the mediumship, it's not an audible thing. It's more, you need to see people's reactions of when I say something that there's no way I could know about that person's passed on family member. And just to see their look of disbelief and this to go, like, how did you know that? What's going on right now? What kind of magic are you playing at? And so to be able to receive what you emanate energetically changes you while you're talking. It's incredible.
thank you, Roy. You're very sweet.
Speak from my heart.
Okay.
I never say anything I don't mean.
Mm.
Yeah, so now we'll get into visceral. Didn't say that correctly.
Visceral.
Yeah. It's interesting with some words that we've said our whole life, and then we actually hear ourselves saying it. We try and say it because we're listening to it. We don't know how to say it, and then it doesn't sound right. Works of nature.
I think I might read. You've heard this one. You heard it in Frank, but it's a really beautiful one. It's not completely visceral. Maybe we'll still warm everybody up.
And now we're going into deeper foreplay now, folks.
Let's do the wolf because it's really beautiful.
Oh, yeah. So, again, for you who are listening and you who are watching, this poem is called The Wolf by Kylie G.
It's 5 past midnight. I do not know this hour, reserved previously for foolhardiness and babes on breast. Now the wolf calls and my moon stirs. She is restless. The air hangs heavy, like the promise of your body on mine, bar a light breeze that occasionally caresses my shoulder. A few strands of golden hair cascade at the wind's command. I shiver, expectant, Is it your breath I feel announcing your arrival? The sheets cling to skin, neither seem to fit anymore. Twisted cotton and feelings long forgotten morphing into hands, the way they drape over hips. I'm convinced I can feel your grip as your fingers deliberately slip down. I drip and open, heart and legs peel apart, sweetening in invitation. Oh, these restless nights and stirring moon, light begins to fill the room, summoning me back to body. My cheeks flush crimson and soul aroused. I ask myself in dream, are you the morning sun or the wolf to my moon? Rising to the sun's greeting, rays on rosette breast, still quivering between legs. I untangle sheets from burning flesh and smile as sun scorches skin, and wolf whispers in ear, hush, my love, hush. His wild, the only one ever known to make my body howl and my moon blush.
Whoa. You're definitely going to need headphones for listening to that one, folks. And if your partner doesn't want to play on a night, get that playing. That'll definitely get them in the mood.
It's like the antidote to porn.
It is, yeah. Oh, yeah, much better. Much better. And yeah, I think that's the third time I've heard it now, and it's still just as powerful. Just as powerful. And interesting enough, each time I've heard it, I've just caught different parts of it. Yeah. Just
So that
incredible.
one came to me one night, literally at 5 past midnight. And I was laying in bed and I was restless, and I just needed to find words to put to how I was feeling. And it was like this, that was one of the Poison poems where it was like sitting under the skin, and it wasn't going to be sad. Like I wasn't going to be satisfied unless I could get that feeling like completely out, that feeling of longing and wanting for connection with another.
So do you feel like this erotic poetry is coming out partly due to the celibacy journey?
Yeah, I would say so. I'm curious once I'm partnered, whether there's a lot of longing, I think, that comes from the way I write.
Yeah.
And I think that's weaved through a lot of it. So yeah, I do feel like that comes from the abstinence.
Well, you
But
can
that's
definitely
also
point them in the right direction. Like, how would you like to be touched in that? Just read this. There you go.
and perhaps that's terrifying. Maybe that's a little
It's
terrifying.
like a roadmap to Kylie's erogenous zones.
It's going to take a strong man, isn't it, Roy?
Oh, bloody hell, yeah. You scare the crap out of me. You really do. In a healthy way. In an absolute healthy way. You're all woman, that's for certain. And, the man that comes along is going to be very, very blessed and very lucky to
He
be in a
will.
partnership with yourself.
I think, I speak of devotion and a lot. And, that's why I've taken this journey of abstinence, is because, we know that perception is projection. And so that which you experience around you is what gets reflected back to you. And, I can call in devotion because I am devoted.
Yeah.
And, I'm already devoted to him. And when I say to him, I don't necessarily mean the husband. I'm also speaking energetically to the him of the universe, and to know that I trust and surrender with that depth.
Yeah.
And I already experience that level of commitment, means that that's what I'm going to recreate when and if it finally happens.
Oh, it won't be a when. It's
when
not an if. Sorry, it's a when. And what's interesting, as you was talking, I've got this image of the tarot card, the moon, which is shadow.
Mm.
And you meant, you in the poem, there's the talk of the wolf and the moon. Are you going to be the wolf to my moon? And it's, to me, the moon in tarot is that going deep within. That's what that journey is about. When that card comes up, you're doing this deep inner journey. It's quite often not quite often. That's a very generalistic. It can, when you're doing a really, really deep inner journey, it'll definitely get backed up by the hermit, which is all that solo. And you are writing this poetry while you're solo. So it's part of your deep inner journey as well, which is why, as much as I was joking when I said it's a roadmap to your erogenous zones, it kind of is, but your deep, deep self. So when he comes along, that deep connection is going to happen very, very quickly, simply because you're already connected to yourself very, very deeply. I mean, I do it, that's the feminine way of doing it, generalistically. I do it through shadow work. I've connected to myself on an extremely deep level, and I'm always rooting around in my shadow. There's not a day, yeah, pretty much. There's not a day go by where I'm just having a quick look. Oh, is there something down there? What's there going on? Before the show started, we was delving into a bit of my shadow that's such at the surface right now for me to release. So that interesting enough that I can accept my divine feminine into my life. So I don't put these hard barriers up that we spoke about. As you said, soften. And what a perfect teacher that I can look up to on how to soften. Because for you, for those, for you who's listening and watching, if you want to clear your shadow, find a perfect teacher. Find someone who knows that journey. And, you can call that from the universe. You can also ask for growth through joy. I highly recommend asking that before you want deep shadow work, because it's much easier to learn through joy than through the other way. Because that way it's far too hard, and we are allowed to ask.
Is it possible though, just through joy?
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, it doesn't mean say it's not. Through joy doesn't mean it's easy. It's still challenging, but you don't have the real dark thoughts. Like, so interestingly enough, I mentioned earlier that my first poem, I was going through challenging times. That's growth through darkness. I'd rather have growth through light. The picture that I chose for the middleman background, it's that beautiful balance, that golden sun, when everyone really enjoys the sun, when you're almost able to look at it and do sun gazing. But it also creates these amazing shadows, the silhouettes. And to me, it's one of the most perfectly balanced in regards to playing with light, the way it can be. That's where I like to learn. So your shadow's still there, still really powerful, but you've got that sun backing you up, that warmth and that glow, that it's not midday sun where it's too harsh. It's not too low where you're getting that cold wind and that cold chill of the night. That warm where you can just feel like you want to sit there and have just that moment last forever. That's where I love to do shadow work.
Beautiful, right?
Just wrote that down. I've got it on video. I've got it on video. Awesome. Normally when I come out with these really deep things, people go, "Oh, you should have recorded yourself when you said that." I'm like, "Yeah, I always miss these moments." No, I didn't. It's probably the first time ever I've not missed a moment like that.
It was great. That was
Awesome.
beautiful. Perfect.
Might just write it as a poem.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah, awesome. And do you feel as well like the poem that you write, it's part of you coming out fully as well? It's helping you. You did say earlier that it's about owning your divine power. You're all, yeah, your all self.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why I've I've pushed those boundaries, because when I that micro poem that was 5 lines in that made me vomit in the toilet. I mean, it wasn't really pushing the boundaries. It was just that it was something so new and something so foreign to me. But because I know what's happened to me every single time I've taken myself to the edge, and I've, like you were talking about earlier, when you're looking at the fear and the fear that exists. So when I first shared that poem and I had that major physical reaction, it showed me there's fear here.
Mm.
And because there's fear here, that means I've got to clear it up. I'm not satisfied unless I am playing at that level in life. And so when I get to an edge and it's uncomfortable, it doesn't mean retreat, stay small, take a step back. It's like, here's an edge. It's fucking uncomfortable. And I know what that means. It means I've got to jump, because that's the commitment that I've made to myself. I see that fear and it means I've got to step towards it. And so yeah, the writing in that way has been unlocking that at every single angle. And first of all, that looked like sharing more purely when it came to the sensual and erotic words. And then what that looked like, about a year ago, I decided that I was going to speak poetry first in public, and I went along to a spoken word poetry night. And I stood up on stage in a room full of people where I knew not one person in the room. And I chose my three most intimate pieces that I'd written at the time. And I shared them to this room full of people. And, I stood up there and I shook, and like, my voice quivered and my body shook. And afterwards I hopped off stage and I had this full process of, why was that so uncomfortable for me? And there was a realization that came from that moment. There was a lot of men that stood there and watched. And the piece that arrived to me after that, from having pushed myself into that uncomfortable moment, was that I'd never truly been witnessed by the masculine in my full vulnerability, and have him stand there and hold me so reverently and welcomely, that after I left that evening, like, that showed me where there was still more healing for me to do and more work for me to do around that. And that looked like cultivating my own masculine and my own relationship with him, so that when I do stand there, it's irrelevant of the people that are standing there in the room, but how solidly can I hold myself in it.
And
Yeah.
that's beautiful that you can recognize that. Um, so I like to push people's gifts or show them a new avenue they may not have thought about. And I know you do mentoring and coaching. Have you ever thought about, while you're mentoring coaching, to tune into their energy and get their poem that starts to unlock them?
Yeah, not yet. I do find that, um, in mentorship and coaching, there have been pieces that have come to me intuitively, of perhaps things that I've written before that feel really important to share with them. But yeah, I have no doubt that, it could evolve definitely in that way. And
Because
I
it's just it would be a very, especially for the feminine that are unlocking their own divine feminine, who aren't fully connecting with their partner, whether they have one or not, or, they're learning to connect and they don't have a partner. But either way, it'd be interesting that they'd have this mantra like this, that, because it's interesting where when you said you was on stage and you was quivering, and whereas now, like, you've got this strong voice and you're making everyone else quiver. And you could bring that, because mentoring and coaching and psychology and the way we heal is rapidly changing. This sitting in a room just talking about our issues over and over and over again, it doesn't work anymore. And there's new ways being birthed all the time. I mean, the way I do my sessions are completely unique. And again, I tune into people's energy and just find out what they need in that moment. And my intuition just says, right, yeah, do this, do that. I'll get told beforehand if it needs to be outdoors or I need to take something with me. And you will do the same in your version. They get their unique poem that's unlocking them to their next level of divinity, whether it's masculine or feminine. Because where you get that thread from the universe, you just push that thread and get that thread from their higher self
Mm.
and unlock their personal poem. Personal poem readings with Kylie. She can put her price on it. Her details will be in the comments below. Book a session in.
Yeah, that'd definitely be something I'd love
And
to
you'd be able to do it like that because you're already well versed in connecting and writing poetry. So it's just a tweak, It's just basically flicking a switch on, going, right, I'll do it that way instead.
Great. I love it.
Yeah.
Great suggestion. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Mm.
Because I personally, I just want to see people grow into their power. And whatever that power is, because I'm not a big fan of seeing people play small. I want to see people play big and play all out. And because that's how we change the world. We change the world by being our version of the world, all out. And that means, yeah, each time you get to that fear edge, you know that that's your world growing. Then just stand up to it, push through it. I'm still learning all this podcasting stuff. I think the last episode I did, God, I was faffing around setting the thing up, and then I couldn't get the lighting right, and because their room didn't have very great light, and I've only got a little thing, and it's like, yeah, all these teething problems, but I just laugh about it in the moment, and it just put a personal note in my head going, right, I need to get that, and I forgot I need to get that, and then I need to get that, and so there's all these things, and because the next plan is actually to basically manifest a place to live that's got a study that I can turn into my podcast studio and healing room. So now I think we're ready to go visceral. Oh God, I'm gonna have to. I don't know how to say that. I don't know why. Visceral. Visceral. That's it. Yeah, that's the word.
So you'd like something more? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Again, we said we was going to play all out, and we've gradually built in. we've got people all warmed up and ready.
I just don't know if I remember all of this one. I'm just reminding myself. I haven't read this one for a very long time. Okay.
Get ready, folks. Here it comes.
I'm going to need you a little deeper, like bass notes and raven haired sirens. You've been tracing your fingers along these familiar edges, and it is doing little to comfort this need. Polite conversations and yes ma'ams brushing up against my soul, but not claiming it. Heart and shoulder revealed. Don't you know how I want it? Give me kisses that thieve the air from my lungs, leaving me breathless, gasping and begging for more. Hands slapping on the floor, eyes and wetness enticing you into the void. Come, lover, now is not the time for trepidation. Sink into me, this visceral yearning demands your attention. Lick the underside of my skin. Start there, hands snaking round hair, neck and frailty exposed. Your fingers know the reach I crave, tongue devoted and breath enslaved to you. The siren unleashed. Now you are gasping for breath, gills forming in chest, taking pieces from my breast. Tighten your grip, ride the waves, and consummately drown in these depths.
Jeez. Wow. Whoa. Sweating, guys. I'm sweating here. That's like 100 shades of wow. That is audible porn. Definitely not. There's a tick box in when you upload this to YouTube where it says it's made for kids. This is definitely not for kids. 18 rated.
You might need to get a warning on your podcast.
Yeah, put some like visuals on it. Adults only.
Mm.
No, that's just because the thing is, what I found fascinating about that, it was opening my heart chakra. It was hitting here. And when you're speaking at that power level, and that's just for me personally. It might hit people in their sacral or their crown or wherever, but the point being is it's energetically powerful. So yeah, fascinating and absolutely incredible.
That piece really just came from a moment of like being in connection with people and just not being satisfied with the surface level stuff. It was really, it is sensual and it is erotic, but actually the meaning behind it is just, let's reach the depths of like of who we truly are, like big, deep, dark, scary depths of everything. And it's an invitation to be all of that.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, the word lovemaking, so many people don't understand. They think lovemaking is just a different word for sex, but it's not. It's like the fact that you spoke that deeply erotic, powerfully erotic poem didn't hit my loins. It hit my heart, which is where it should be hitting. When you're truly connecting with somebody, that's what should open. That's where you connect.
Yeah, I love that, Roy. Thank you. I think that's also one of the reasons, like especially in the online community space, I share this online, and yet um, the connections that I create in the online community, they are heart connections, and they are it's honorable, and it's revered, and it's respected, and I don't have men disrespecting me in a sexual way. And I really feel like it's because of that, because it's so much deeper than
Yeah.
just sex.
And look, and again, with it opening my heart, it makes me want to fall in love with you. But more in a like, but more in a, let's try and explain what I'm being shown right now.
Mm.
So I'm being shown in my mind's eye this colourful, it's almost like with these energetic cosmic beings still in the human form, but not the human body, just almost like a grid work of electricity. And the backdrop is like of nebulas and the red ones. So there's all this, it's like we're falling into this space of deep connection that isn't sex, it's love, bringing people into their energetic self, which at our energetic level, we are pure love, which is why men don't disrespect you because they're connected at that deep level where they're deep themselves and you're not in ego. So you don't go there. You just go straight to, well, we're divine beings. Let's connect. That's tantric poetry.
Yeah.
So we've got poison poetry, lightning poetry, tantric poetry, personal poetry. Bring out all these facets of Kylie
Yeah, it's great.
since she's come out and started doing this stuff. And the world needs your poetry.
Mm.
Absolutely. I'm just buzzing here. I'm just like, I'm going off. I'm like, yeah, just leave me alone a minute. I'm just in bliss. Magical bliss.
Mm.
So, slightly off that topic. So, Gilmeister, is that your married name or your maiden?
That's my maiden name.
Okay.
Mm.
And then was you creating the poetry with your maiden name always in place?
I mean, I write under my pen name, which is Into the Wild Divine. Um, I don't write under my name, and that's not because I'm hiding from my name, but I think the name came to me, that Into the Wild Divine, was because it was an invitation. You know, it was the journey into my own internal world, and it's also an invitation for others to join me in that world. So yeah, I don't really write during my name. Not that I hide it. Everybody knows my online that my name
Yeah.
is Kylie, but
Yeah, it's all right. This is my intuition stepping through the process. So, what do you know what Gilmeister means?
oh no, I'd say something master, but I don't know. I'd say Meister means master, but I don't know.
Yeah, the etymology of your name. Because I know, look, I know my name, Bristow, means town or village by the bridge.
Mm.
Goes back to the Viking times. That's kind of what it means. And I'm, you know, and again, I'm the middleman, which is the bridge.
Ah, beautiful.
Yeah, and I'm one end of the bridge, which, you know, even in spiritual terms, I am one end of the bridge, that bridge of light. Yeah, we'll look into that after the show because it'd be interesting. Because I got drawn to the G, and I'm like, okay, G, and then you know, asked if it was maiden name, the one you was born with, and yeah, there'll be the reason why invariably when I start asking these kind of questions that are coming from my intuition, it's because it'll link directly to why you do poetry.
Yeah, great.
Just like my name links into the middleman, and because interestingly enough, like I haven't played full out. I've been growing into it, but after prac, I went right. I'm playing full out. I'm psychic because I used to hide away from the psychic medium stuff a bit. Because I wanted to be more a healer and a wizard and all that lot. But that's just it's an integral part of me. And I was doing that because I feel there is a lot of society stigma around psychic mediums, the non-belief and that we're just fortune tellers and that kind of thing. And that's not the case. But when I played all in out, then the middleman came in, and yeah, it's amazing what happens when you play all out and truly own yourself. So there's a lesson for you who are listening and you who are watching. Find your passion and go after that. Yeah, it doesn't mean leave your job straight away because you've got to fund that transition. But find out what your passion is, and there'll definitely be a way to have a career doing that. Especially these days, there's so many people working for themselves in the arts, in the creative arts, and creating incredible money from it. It's not about the money, but when you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so we'll definitely look into that. So for yourself, Kylie, what's next? What's next in your life?
There's lots of changes that are happening at quite at quite rapid speed. I feel like I'm making well, this is the thing, you ask the universe to deliver, and it delivers, and it's delivering, and I'm playing catch up. So what's next for me is I'm leaving behind my previous employment as I embark on making this my full-time journey. And so there's a book that's am in the middle of writing, part poetry, also masculine and feminine prose that will be weaved in and relating intimacy.
Part poetry, part porn for those that are watching.
No.
Just yeah, not quite. Yeah, just bring some humor in.
I think that's going to be more, yeah, like a journey of the embodiment into masculine, feminine, as well as the poetry within that. There's also, yeah, I'd love to do more podcasting, a platform where that's, you know, for sort of paid poetry, to get people away from seeking porn as a way to stimulate their senses and
Mm.
themselves and to find something. So that's also in the work. Obviously, I'm building up my coaching business as well, where, you know, doing the hypnosis and the NLP, and also very heavily centered around intimacy and relationships, and helping people to create intimacy within themselves that they then may get to experience with other people. I'm also moving. I'm relocating I'm up west of Brisbane at the moment, so relocating down towards the Gold Coast area, which is where much more community is. So yeah, there's lots of really exciting things happening, and it's all going to happen between now and January.
Yeah, powerful, profound changes, and because there is big, rapid changes going on. Before I get into that in a little bit of depth, what was interesting, joking aside, when I made the joke, my intuition basically came through very clear. Your poetry book is actually going to operate in people like a self-help book. That's how they're going to receive it. Like there's a lot of these self-help mindset books. This is a self-help intimacy book without them realizing that's what it is. It's like ninja poetry.
Stealthy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So, and the thing is, I love it when books can reach you in a way that you wasn't expecting. You think it's this kind of book, and while you're reading it, it's doing something completely different with you. That just means that the person writing it was tuned in at the time. And, you do intuitively download all of your poetry, even the ones that make you vomit in the toilet. But yeah, so the squeeze that's going on, basically Mother Earth is shedding in the very, very last stages of shedding her 3D, 4D skin. And so we're in what I call the Vesica Pisces squeeze. So for those that are unaware what the Vesica Pisces is, if you draw two circles that are overlapping, that bit where they cross over, that's the Vesica Pisces. And that's basically, yeah, so, and we're gradually moving out of it. And as that Vesica Pisces bit gets smaller and smaller, the squeeze gets harder and harder and more intense, and we get forced to do things. So, that choice, like we think we've got a conscious choice. That choice that you leave work, you move, that's the 5D energy going, we need you in your next place of power because we're going to rapidly change your life.
Yeah, I'm getting this because I see things visually too. I just keep seeing this giant seatbelt. It's like
strap in, girl. It's
strap in.
Get ready.
Yeah, which feels incredible and exciting, and I'm a big stand for where humanity is going, and there's been such a disconnect between man and woman, that's happened over the past few years. I mean, you look at the divorce rate, now it's the highest that it's ever actually been. And even when you look into numbers of people that are in relationship yet are still thinking about ending relationships, I think it's up around, it's tripled that figure. And I know what that's like. I did the same journey and I ended a marriage. But I'm also seeing now the importance of, how can we make that reconciliation happen, where man and woman are working together with each other, united and balanced, and with a deep honoring and a deep respect of each other, and look at actually now creating something really great and really beautiful together. And I want to see both man and woman in their fullest versions of themselves.
And one of the best pieces of information that I was given in around to facing any challenges in a relationship is always remember that it's not you versus her. Obviously I'm talking heterosexual relationships because that's how I am. But any partnership, it's not you versus the other person. It's you two together versus the problem. Because if you face it, you versus the other person, you get into an ego battle, which makes it worse. And the hole gets deeper that you both dig. You both grab a spade and dig deeper. Whereas if you can both step above your ego and come together and go, right, there's a problem here, let's face it together, the problem will lose. Or at least if it comes to that it is time to walk away, you both come to the same conclusion, and it's not done through an ego battle and arguments and plate throwing and stuff like, the real, in other words, that, as we were speaking earlier about, you can either do the journey the dark way or you can do it through joy. You come together and face the problem. That's doing it through joy. It's still challenging. It's still tough, and there's still gonna be hurt involved, but there's none of the real dark stuff that takes a lot of humbleness to come back from, where you feel an ass and go, yeah, okay, I got that spade and whacked you with it, rather than just didn't pick the spade up in the first place.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Roy, we've spoken a lot recently about my relationship with my ex-husband, and the shifts that we are now experiencing together as a separated family. And it took a lot for me to be able to look at this relationship, and where I've accused him of being selfish. Where am I selfish? That I've accused him of being angry, but, so have I. And in my, to create a war between two people, you need two belligerents. And in fact, both people are belligerent. And what it actually takes to be able to lay those swords down, which is what I've done recently, is I've gone to this man and I've laid my sword down and I've said, I've seen what I've created here, and let's create something else. And I wouldn't be able to teach masculine and feminine dynamics if I still had a relationship with a masculine counterpart that wasn't being held at its highest level of potential. And seeing how I've been able to change that relationship where I thought there was no hope. And, I speak to so many women who are experiencing things like this, and they discount it. And what they don't realize is all they have to do is go first, and
And
change the thing within themselves, and it shifts everything.
what's interesting, my situation, there's still hard boundaries there, but because we were speaking about that before the show, and through experience, there's, I feel, a very, very valid reason why I've got my boundary there. But there was also a plaque on the wall that says, when you're ready to bring your sword, it'll be accepted. And it just means that they're not ready. So, interesting enough, as you're talking, I got this realization that, okay, what am I being taught in this? Because I know it's not boundaries because of the whole lesson behind it and where it's at the moment. It's bloody patience again. And I thought, I have been working on patience for a long time because I know I'm impatient, but it's got much less now. It's only this big now. And but again, it's like freaking another lesson of patience. Really? Freaking and it's interesting because here's a very interesting thing. If there's something in your life that you think you've figured out, but it's still not shifting, it means you're not looking at the right lesson. Because I always thought this was about boundaries, and it's not. It's about bloody patience. And I never would have figured that. Yeah. In that moment, I'm like, oh God, it's so obvious. So that's good. So now I can face that going, all right, it's patience. Right, I can let it go. And I know it's patience. So all I have to do is be patient. And I know how to do that. Awesome. Thanks for that. This is how powerful she is, folks. She just talks, says her things, and you get insights. Brilliant. Again, her details will all be in the comments in the description, where you can find this lady for poison poetry, ninja poetry, erotic poetry, personal poetry, lightning poetry, coaching, mentoring, and everything else that she'll provide to the world in the future. How to repair broken relationships, not necessarily to get back together again, but so you can, especially like when kids are involved, so they don't get affected, so they see how to act when you have to go different separate ways. Yeah, you've got a lot to teach the world, Kylie.
Thank you, Roy.
So I feel that's where we'll finish the show today. We've got visceral, we've built them up into it, and we'll let them down gently. Let's end with a gentle one.
Ooh.
The afterwards spoon hug kind of poem.
A spoon hug kind of poem. Ooh, Roy. I'm thinking a spoon hug kind of one. The other one that I thought, it's not exactly a spoon hug kind of one, but shall we share the Of Gods and Monsters from Prague?
If you feel that's the right one, go for it.
I do. I do.
I'll trust you.
And this is about reconciliation. And so I feel like that's a really beautiful way to finish it. Great.
Well, I'm getting tingles, so it's definitely the right one.
Great. Bring your God and your monster to my bed, and we'll unsheath ourselves from this mortal flesh. I'm not afraid of your godlike strength. You do not scare me in your vulnerability. For in your monster, I see protector. I see the ancients that move through boiling blood, the men who went to war, the fathers who fought, the brothers in arms. Draw your sword. When you bare your teeth and growl at me, the animal unleashed return to the wild. I feel safe. I feel loved. So come, monster, allow yourself to feel again. I'll lay my body down in surrender, claim my white flag. It's there for the taking, and I'll show you what it feels like to be received. Yes, even in your power. Blood dripping from teeth, sweat-covered skin, muscles ripping at the seams, arms beating on chest. I open, legs and resolve dissolving in response. She's ready. We'll start slowly. The uncovering of souls, breath to breath, bones to bones. I'll allow my flesh to melt away in your hands. Now use your teeth if you like. I'm asking you to shred any remaining semblance of respectability from my name, for my name is your name. I've howled it on the wind since the beginning of all time. Answer the call and tear down these walls with your tongue. There's no shame in how much you want me, in how much I want you. Use your fingers to stoke the flames of the long burning embers. Drive another one in. My wetness drowning your fears. Taste them on your lips. Roll them around your mouth. Now go deeper. Take even more. Watch me move under your intensity, knowing that you created this, knowing that I too am God. I too am monster. I see the parts of me in you that you see in yourself, animals that dance inside the eyes, and it does not frighten me. My God. My monster, my love, I'm on my knees just waiting for you to remember.
All right. Fuck me. Jeez. That's the way to end the show. That was so for you who are watching and you who are listening, however you felt that, yeah, to me, it activated my holy grail. It's like there was a cup right below my heart. It's like I was blushing spiritually, energetically blushing. And then my Kundalini started to rise. Whoa. Wow. I don't know how I'm going to describe this in the description. Everybody needs to listen to this. Everybody needs to watch this. Share it with your friends. Like, if this doesn't go viral, there's something wrong in the world. Just wow. You know me well enough. It's not very often I'm speechless. There is no words for that. There really isn't. Oh, I'm bloody geez. I'm sweating here, literally. But energetically slight. It's kind of activated a deep part of my healing abilities that have never activated. Oh, I understand what Holy Grail is now. Whoa, God. Whatever you're experiencing while you're watching this and listening to this, I need to put a disclaimer on it. Do not drive while we're listening to this podcast. It's going to be some crashes. Well, all I can say is a massive, massive, massive thank you for coming on the show, playing all out, creating energy like I've never experienced, and being you. This incredible. Can you remember that? Can you remember during Prague when I said "Oh, you're like a goddess," and you was wearing the goddess dress? You're just embodying that energy of the goddess. Yeah, you're going to change the world in a way that it's never believed it could be changed. Yep. So that's where we'll say goodbye, or au revoir is probably more appropriate in French. And I'll definitely see you in the next shows. I hope you keep following this podcast. There's more amazing guests to come. I'm only at the beginning and I'm already hitting the heights with Kylie. And things only, practice creates competency and makes things better and bigger and bolder. This is only going to grow. Just like Kylie's life is going to change everybody and help them grow. So, again, thank you very much. I'll see you in the next episode. Time for the outro.